Well, I said I was going to do it, so hey, I'm still doing it. Alrighty then, so the second episode of The Acolyte, or rather part 2 of the first episode. Realistically, this thing, it wasn't really set up as 8 single episodes, it's more like set up as... Yeah, 4 and 5 were a double episode, 3 was a separate episode, 7 was kind of sort of a rehash of 3. Why the heck they put it so late, I have no idea. 6 and 8 are more or less the same thing. Why they shoved 7 between them, I'm not sure. They wanted to do like dramatic story reveals that they flubbed by making it obvious. Again, the reason why I'm pairing things like this is because of the fact that the story beats in 3 followed directly into 7. And most of it was boringly obvious. Anyway, so this is part 2 of the first episode. And honestly, the story in this is, like I said, a direct continuation of what came before. It doesn't do quite as much in the world building stuff because they've at least introduced most of the characters in passing. They do some of it, but not a huge amount. So, the first thing they introduced is the planet Olega, where May goes because she wants to assassinate Torben. Somehow the party of Jedi managed to get there right in time to talk to May and Kimir before they managed to leave. Now, one thing that's noteworthy here is that Kimir has apparently been on Olega long enough to have replaced a local apothecary, but only for like 1 day or something. Very short time period. So short of a time period that the people of Olega think he's suspicious and are questioning where the previous apothecary went. Yeah, the implication seems to be that Kimir killed him in order to get him out of the way. Now, as we already established about Kimir, he's, an important character and not some throwaway that we're never going to see again. I know, shocking, whatever. The only character that's like a notable death in this episode gets killed on Olega, and that's the main reason why we come to Olega. This, of course, being Torben. Torben has lived here for most of the time since the incident on Brindok. And it's been said that he's been living in a vow of silence for 10 years. Yeah, the Brash Vow. He's basically been meditating and trying to find meaning in the Force or something or other. Now, this is not actually the first time this has been used. It's, however, used in a rather simplistic way here, because it kind of sort of being used to say that Torben hasn't left Olega for 10 years, hasn't set foot outside the temple for 10 years. That's rather strange. Also, if you're paying attention to numbers and time periods, the incident on Brindok was 16 years ago. So Torben spent 6 years doing regular Jedi stuff before deciding to take the Barash vow and go into silent meditation in the temple on Olega. Why exactly that is hard to say. Now, one thing that is mentioned in previous usage of the Barash vow is that, yes, having a particularly traumatic experience fighting Darksiders is a reason why people have been known to take the Barash vow, because they're trying to cleanse themselves of the dark side's influence or something or other. In Torben's case, I've heard people describe his condition as PTSD. Like he is just that badly messed up by what happened to him. Because let's face it, he had someone mentally violate him more than once. And in the episode, when it happens and we see it, well, yeah, it's shown that he is just that badly screwed up by it, that he's just not feeling himself. Taking the Barash vow as a way to try to, recenter himself, sure. Now, what happens next? This is the sort of thing that in a TTRPG would require someone to pass a skill check that requires them to roll a natural 20 or fail. Because, quite frankly, the idea of, like, I'm going to tell the Jedi Council what you did. If you don't, kill yourself by drinking poison. Yeah. This is one of those things. It's just like an incident where it only works because someone got absurdly lucky with a dice roll. And as a storytelling mechanic, it's the sort of thing that I would probably just not even put on the table. Me personally, anyways. Because of the fact that one, we don't actually have a good reason to believe that Torben wants to do this. That's actually the other part of this that's confusing to people, is that they don't establish prior to Torben's death why Torben would be willing to die. And after he's dead, we never find out. I mean, because like they do flashbacks to the incident on Brendok twice and show it from two different perspectives. And other than getting mentally violated, we don't really see any particular reason for Torben to be that messed up about it. Anyways, so for the rest of the plot, the nature of the poison used to kill Torben is actually something I thought was a cool idea in principle. So, on Brendok, they have this thing called a bunta tree. The bunta tree has these interesting looking yellow leaves. It's kind of pretty, like a weeping willow, only yellow instead of green. And sticks out because of the fact that it looks different. And notice how the other plants just aren't crowding it. Like its toxic nature makes the other plants want to stay away from it. And also, Osha is apparently the only person on the planet who actually likes to be next to it. The rest of them stay away from it because it's poisonous, and they don't want to be close to it when they don't need to be. Yeah, it's a very strange thing for them to put in with an Osha's character. Like, she's the bad twin, but she's the bad twin when her family are evil, so being the bad twin makes her try to act like a good person, yet she's like double evil and fails at that. Like I said, that didn't make a whole lot of sense in the show, but whatever. Getting back to this though, the idea behind this is that the witches like to use it for hunting, because the toxin that they are able to make from the bunta tree leaves will actually decompose relatively quickly after you kill something with it. So it won't, taint the food. so you can eat the food and not worry about poisoning yourself with bunta poison. Okay. Why exactly? Actually, you know what? On second thought, I suspect that May actually went back to Brindok and picked up some of it. They don't say she did, okay? But the logic of it being a thing that deteriorates quickly would seem to indicate that the leaves that she gave to Chimere to turn into liquid poison were fresh. Also, May doesn't actually know how to refine it into a poison. That's why she got Chimere to do it for her. Which does suggest that the nature of the poison vial that Chimere synthesized is different than the kind of poison that the witches were using. It also makes that scene where the witches are pointing bows at the Jedi a lot more intimidating when you know that they're tipped with a deadly toxin like this. Or potentially, anyways. The whole, like, short-term duration thing of it makes me wonder how long you could have an arrow tipped with it. Like, a few hours, maybe? Although, um, the... I forget what the race's name is. Dang it. The one of the two witch leaders that has the horns on her head. I could look it up, but um, Coral. Coral gave the witches advance notice to arm themselves prior to the Jedi showing up for that fateful encounter. So, yeah, it is possible the witches did have enough time to synthesize poisoned arrows. So that if you get shot with one of the arrows, you will die of bunta poisoning. Or at the very least get hurt by it. Because, like, certain poisons, the way they work, like, for example, neurotoxins. A neurotoxin hitting your arm, it might cripple the nerves in your arm without killing you. And that'll be lingering damage that'll might last for your entire life. Just a possible way that something like that would go down. We don't actually know what category of toxin the bunta poison is. The only things we know about it is that, one, Torben died rather quickly after drinking a vial of it. And that, okay, using it as for hunting purposes would suggest that whatever formulation of extract the witches were using, it would kill within minutes, even then. That was presumably not a liquid extract. It was something that they could tip their arrows with. But it did work quickly. But again, neurotoxin, cytotoxin, hemotoxin, we don't know. And that's about it for this. It's like the idea is actually a cool one, but it's a kind of minor plot point. And also the fact that it's something that's traceable back to Brindok is, well, May knows about it. Like, I'm not sure if May is supposedly trying to use this as like a poetic justice thing because, well, Torben doesn't know what it is. Torben, or at least there's no indication that Torben knows that it's bunta poison. I don't even think Torben knows what bunta. Actually, you know what? That is an interesting point. They later reveal that Torben had been on this planet for 7 weeks, so it's possible that he had actually encountered a bunta tree and knew what bunta poison was. The only member of that team we actually see looking at a bunta tree is Sol, but Sol doesn't actually seem to know that it's a poisonous tree. He just knows that May and Osha were hanging out there. Now, it's possible Soul did hear May talking to Osha about how the tree is poisonous, because that is a conversation that they did have while Soul was in the area. So it's possible Soul heard that conversation. But that's as far as that goes. Anyway, so the rest of the episode. That is actually the biggest plot point, though, is that Torben gets killed with Bunta poison by someone who snuck into the temple and just hands it to him. And the Jedi team get kind of distraught because, well, they realize that Kimir was in on it after they give him a warning, which I'm genuinely... Okay, looking at this from a TTRPG standpoint, if the Jedi team in this are the player characters and the NPCs are people like Kimir and May and Torben, then I wouldn't write that sort of thing, but having them, the players, have the opportunity to arrest Kimir and take him back to Coruscant as a prisoner. I mean, he can't do his thing where he whips out all of his Sith gear because he's in town and doesn't have trying to be inconspicuous. If you had a player group who did decide that they're going to arrest him and take him back to Coruscant for questioning, as a GM, you might find that to be something that kind of sidetracks the entire adventure. I have actually seen that come up in things where, and in this one, in fact, the episode as aired has a similar moment because they try to arrest May. Then May does this thing where she creates a sandstorm and uses it as a distraction to run away, and they somehow fail to find her. One thing that comes up here that I personally found to be very, very strange, both from a traditional story writing standpoint and as a GM Fiat standpoint, is that there's a moment in here that strikes me as GM Fiat that even from a GM Fiat standpoint doesn't make sense. Okay, so after the team of Jedi finds that Torben is dead and try to arrest May, well, they're about to pursue May. They call back to the temple on Coruscant and get told by Vernestra to come to Coruscant so that she can have a meeting and talk to them about the situation rather than chasing the person who they're in hot pursuit of. Really? That's one of those things where it just reeks of GM Fiat. It's like, no, you're not allowed to catch the villain yet. You have to do other things before you can catch the villain. Time to go do the side story and put the main story on hold until you have finished the side story. No. Kind of lame, honestly. A lot of people would refer to that as railroad storytelling. And they actually wrote the series that way. Even though it's them writing things in whatever way they feel fitting, they wrote in a moment that mimics railroad storytelling in a TTRPG into a TV show. Oh, man. I mean, let's face it, several of the people who are working on this said that they had more experience with TTRPG writing than genuine TV show writing, and yeah, I can see that and how this plays out. It's like they write the Jedi as if they're a party of player characters. Granted, most of the party is just along for the ride, but whatever. And then they have the GM insert character tell the party to stop what they're doing and then go do something else. Okay, there is one more thing I need to go over before we leave here. And dang it, I lost my train of thought. Crap. Oh, right, the Kalnaka thing. One of the things about this is that they rapidly jump back and forth between different locations, and that when in one of these jumps, they actually jump to where Kelnaka lives and reveal that Kelnaka has built a house out of the remains of a crashed ship, and the location where he's living, they actually have an incident where some visitors try to steal parts of the crashed ship that he is living in the wreckage of. Now, they don't explain ever what ship that is, why Kelnaka is living in that, or, anything about this, but it's an interesting scene because it's thrown in just as a way to introduce the location where Kelnaka lives. Feels kind of strange, but whatever. Yeah. So yeah, recap. They do actually have a lot of talking in this, but that's like having player characters gripe at each other about things and not really all that interesting. Well. Anyway, though. Yeah, that's about it for this episode. The basic premise of this is basically it's like player characters try to do something and fail because the GM tells them that they're not allowed to succeed yet. Honestly, certain of the concepts that are used in this are fine and good and stuff. It's just that the main focus of it is one of those things. It's very, if your players want to do this, good. If not, never mind. Alrighty then, I guess my next episode is going to be about Brendok, because that was one of the main things here. It's like, of all of the planets that they go to in here, there's only two of them that have any real notability. One of them is Brendok, and the other one is that one that Kamir goes to in order to mine cortosis. Anyways, see you guys next time.